So if you are going to have any kind of style of counseling, but especially if you are going to be working one-on-one with people, effective communication is key. Because if we don't communicate ourselves properly, that meaning-centeredness is not going to come through. We're not going to be able to place those thoughts or ideas or perceptions or behaviors into people's minds, and we're not going to get through to people. Plus, we're not going to have a good relationship with people, so they don't come back to us as well. So like I said, effective communication is key to pretty much any job you're ever going to have. Okay, so with respect to effective communication, there's some kind of basic steps that's going to guide, especially the counseling process. So what's really key is if you are working one-on-one, that you're developing rapport. But even if you do have like an expert style or a director style, rapport is also important. For me as a director, I definitely work on establishing rapport with you guys. I want you guys to like me. I want you guys to feel safe and comfortable in my space, because then you're more likely to be able to listen to what I have to say and really accept what I have to say as well. Okay, so develop that rapport, create that comfortable environment where that person feels safe, that person feels invited, and ideally help create a relationship that's going to help them move forward. Okay, and then also part of the counseling process is about helping the person when they actually need it. Okay, not just telling them what to do all the time, but also kind of moving along with them and figuring out how to best suit their needs at particular times. Okay, so some key things that counselors need, some key skills are listening. And we say that people are like, oh yeah, I listen. I find that when a lot of people listen, they're just really waiting for their time to talk. You can tell, and you can totally tell when someone's not listening to you. When you're like, imagine pouring your heart out to someone and they're like, yeah, yeah. Okay, well, this is what I think. That hurts. And that does not feel safe either. We need to really listen to our clients to kind of shut the voice in our own heads down, so we can actually listen to the voice in their heads before we come up with our own answer. Okay, so that's really going to stop your career, often one-on-one career, right in its tracks if you aren't really listening to what people have to say. Okay, and a good listener also knows how to ask the right questions as well. They know how to ask the right questions based on what the person has said. Okay, explaining is important as well, but explaining not from I know better than everyone kind of way, and also explaining at their level. And you've probably found this in your own BPK career, that some instructors, they are freaking brilliant and they understand concepts up here, and we're still learning down here. Then that's not better or worse, but they're just their understanding of a concept is so high that they're explaining it to, let's say, other professors. And it's I don't know what the heck you're saying. You need to bring that explanation to that person's level. Okay? Giving and getting feedback and empathy is important as well. You might not have gone through the exact same thing that person has gone through, but you can at least try to understand how that would feel for that person. Okay, so communication is about facilitating understanding. It's about sharing information, like we said, establishing rapport and empathizing with that person as well. Okay, so the key thing here is that communication is more than just talking. We also communicate with the tone of our voice. We communicate with our body language. If I was giving these lectures like this, and if I was talking like this, we would I look bored, You might not want to be listening to what I have to say because I'm communicating that I'm bored. So chances are you're going to feel bored as well, right? So there's a lot more if I'm just looking a different way, or talking to someone, they're looking the other way, that communicates that they're not interested as well. So it's more than just what we're saying. It's about a whole slew of factors. Okay, so I want to talk about some nonverbal skills as well, and in particular some nonverbal listening and communicating skills. So this picture is quite awesome because like they're really listening to whatever that person has to say. So eye contact is important, and it's a skill to develop. I've always had an issue with like not knowing how much is the appropriate amount of eye contact, like like just staring at someone directly into their soul, might be a bit too much eye contact, but like there's like a softness, there's like a soft eye contact that's listening to the person, but not like in their face. That's appropriate. And what I'll say as we go through this takes time. It takes time to figure out your own communication style, but it'll get more and more natural the more you do it. A really good rule of thumb too is if you are working with one-on-one with people, you don't want to be like looking down at them, right? Ideally, you want to get to their level. I always think of I used to waitress, and one of the waitresses I used to work with, she was so good at waitressing, and she used to get the biggest tips. And one of the reasons why is she was just so good at coming. She would like people are sitting at the table, she's the waitress, but she would always just come down to their level and speak to them like eye to eye. So they're like having this kind of heart to heart communication, and instead of like me looking down at you and telling you what to do. Okay. Handshake can go a long way. Firm, there's there's a good style of handshake that kind of depends on the person, but like you want to be firm. Like you don't want like that limp handshake that it feels like there's a bit of a dead hand in there, but firm enough, not too firm. And again, this is something you can practice with your friends or develop over time. Okay. Like I mentioned, there's more to communication than just what we're saying, but our tone matters as well. Okay, so ideally, one of the things I don't try to do this in my teaching, I'm just kind of like this. You'll notice that my voice changes quite a bit. It goes up, it goes down, it goes around. I laugh sometimes, there's a fluctuation to it. And I'm sure we've all had that kind of teacher that talks like this, and it's always like that, and it's harder to pay attention to that person. So a little more variation that kind of comes along with the enthusiasm that person has, that can communicate well. Okay, rate of speech is also important. Sometimes, especially in the director or the preacher side of things, they can speak really quickly, and I have that problem sometimes where I speak a little bit too quickly. But what I try to do is when I have something important to say, I slow my voice down and I speak a little more directly to emphasize that whatever I'm saying is important. Okay, so those kind of minor changes can really come across a lot better than, again, that monotone, unvaried way of speaking. Okay, something else to consider is our personal space. Okay, so about an arm's length distance. I know, well, right now we're still in the social distancing part of this pandemic. So, it's hard to come below 1 arm's length. In fact, 2 arms length is usually what we find, but beyond this situation, ideally give people their space as well. Having kind of a barrier between you guys, too much of a barrier, maybe a small table, it's still like creating a distance between you. So ideally not too many barriers between you, if any. You could also do like 2 chairs facing each other on an angle. That can work. You might be wondering why this picture is here if you don't know who this is, because you're young. This is Jerry Seinfeld, and there's a video in this slide that it's worth clicking on. It's hilarious. It's if you ever watch Seinfeld, it's this episode about someone who's a close talker, and he's like in someone's, when he's talking to people, he's like in their face, and it's really like, it makes people come back when they do notice someone that's close talking. So space is important. Body language also matters. We communicate a lot through our body language. So if our body is like pointing towards the door, if our feet are pointing towards the door away from someone, that often suggests that we're ready to go. So ideally you want to position your body towards someone. I'm someone that's very sensitive to that myself. Like if I notice that someone is like always checking the door or looking towards the door, body's pointing, I can't talk to them because I'm like, you don't want to listen to me. So why would I just bare my soul to you? So being like facing the person, trying to have that confident but relaxed body language, ideally not crossing your arms, but it kind of depends. Some of us just like find crossing our arms really comfortable, and it's still kind of open, whereas sometimes crossing your arms can be very like back off. Okay, so again, it's about finding a style that works for you, but I wouldn't overthink it. I would think more about like how you want, like I would think more about really listening to the person and really caring about the person, because the other stuff often comes, and if we're obsessing too much about our body language or our verbal skills or these other things, then we might be in our heads too much and not listening to our clients. Okay, so I would personally recommend working on empathy, working on like really listening to people. You can try this with your friends and family, and then often these other things come with that as well. But you might want to just catch yourself if you are communicating with someone and you have more of these closed kind of responses going on, because that person often feels that. And some of us are better than others at like noticing these things in other people. Okay, but it's good to just be aware of these things. Some verbal skills that can really help you get people talking and for them to feel comfortable as well. We're going to go over some of these on the next few slides. So bridge words. So let's say you ask someone an open-ended questions like, what's been your past experience with physical activity? And as they're talking, you want them to talk. For one reason, a lot of people find clarity by talking. Right? Plus you want to figure out if while they're talking, there's like clues that can help you guide them towards a plan, right? So as someone's talking, they're like, I've had this path of physical activity and this has happened. And then you're like, yeah. Oh yeah. Uh-huh. Go on. Oh, I see. This like encouraging them to talk a little bit more, those bridge words. What you're doing is you're bridging towards their next sentence. So they keep talking. So again, they can find their own clarity and motivation. Asking for clarification shows that you're listening, and it also helps you get to the root of things a little bit more as well. So I don't actually understand what you meant by this. Do you mean this or do you mean this? Or could you just clarify a little bit on that? But again, you got to watch your tone with this. It's like, I don't understand what you're saying. Like, can you clarify? Those two are very different, right? So again, that empathetic, compassionate, rapport-focused tone, that's important. You mentioned this. Can you tell me more about that? Or can you please elaborate on this? Again, you're asking them to keep going, and again, we're trying to get to the heart of something. In general, we want to ideally, especially with motivational interviewing, ask open-ended questions. Instead of saying, do you like physical activity? That's a yes or no question. But it's like, like I used before, what's been your past experience with physical activity? Or what kind of activities have you enjoyed in the past? Okay. Something that's really effective for getting people to keep talking and to show them you're listening is restating or mirroring. Okay, so restating might just is longer usually. Restating means like, let's say that person just talked a paragraph long. You pick a sentence and you're like, you restate that sentence when they're done talking. Okay, mirroring, if you've ever read a great book called Never Split the Difference, which is by this negotiator named Chris Voss, fantastic book on negotiation, but he talks about mirroring, which is just repeating the last one or last three words the person says. And it again gets it builds rapport, and it gets the person to keep talking a little bit more. So for what I just said, gets the person to keep talking a little bit more. That would be mirroring. I know it sounds weird right here, but try it with your family. It works like you would not believe. Like people don't even realize that they keep talking. Just repeat the last word, the last three words back to them, and it's amazing the results you'll find. Okay, paraphrasing, this is a key counseling strategy, right? So I'm listening to what you're saying, and it sounds like you're saying that X, Y, and Z. Is that correct? So you're asking for clarity, but you're also showing them that you're listening and that you're getting to the heart of things. This is so effective, and people feel really heard when you're like, I think what you're saying is this, is that correct? Or I'm feeling that kind of behind what you're saying is this, is that correct? Okay? So something we typically do at the end of session is we summarize. So we say like, okay, well, this is what we've talked about today, and these are some of the main themes that I'm picking up, okay, or that I think we talked about today. You said that you've had this history of physical activity, and these are activities that you've enjoyed, but you've struggled with this, but you'd like to start trying this. Is that correct? Right? So summarize, so the main points. It's like take-home messages. What do you want to leave that person with? And something else that's highly effective in counseling and coaching is reflecting meaning and feeling. Okay, so it's about listening to what's kind of behind the words as well, and what that person is feeling, the emotion of what they're feeling as well. Okay, so it's reading between the lines to find the emotion and validating these feelings in a non-judgmental way. So I'll give you some examples of this concept of reflecting and what is reflecting and what isn't. So if the client were to say, I would like to be more physically fit, but I don't like going to the gym. I think it's important to be fit and healthy, but I can't seem to find the time for it. My life is so busy. There doesn't seem to be enough time for everything. Physical activity is a priority for me, but I don't get it done on most days because other things keep coming up. Right? So a counselor might say, and this is from someone else's example, so I might be a little bit more tactful with this, but I hear what you're saying, that you've been really trying. It sounds that this might be a little bit frustrating for you, or you might feel a bit overwhelmed by all these things. Does that sound correct? Okay, so you're reflecting kind of what's behind the tone, the feeling, that overall experience of that person. Okay. However, this is not reflecting. I've been trying to lose weight by going to a local gym, but I am a full-time worker, and after work, I have to take care of my children and prepare dinner for my husband and my family. I love spending time with my children. They love spending time with me. So I spend most of my time at home with my children rather than taking care of myself. So what a counselor might say, CO is counselor, I assume you love your children a lot. I suggest that you exercise with your children instead of staying at home with them. Okay. That is not reflecting. I assume is not talking about those feelings, the person's feelings, right? I suggest is giving them advice, okay? From this example here, I might say, it sounds like you feel a bit overwhelmed with all of your different responsibilities, and you feel kind of conflicted with wanting to do the gym stuff, but also trying to balance all the responsibilities you have. Is that correct? Okay, so again, overwhelmed might be the feeling that's kind of behind this. Okay, so on these slides are some other examples of not reflecting, and I want you to give it a shot as well in your own time. So some other things that I just want to cover about communication, and it's important to really understand our clients. And we have to really get to the heart of what's stopping them from engaging in the behavior we'd like them to engage in. And we have to really realize that everyone's a bit different. Okay, so building that rapport, having that open communication, letting people talk. This is really about getting to the heart of some of the things that are covered on this slide. And if we understand them a little bit more, we can hopefully help guide them, not just tell them, but guide them lovingly, non-judgmentally, to a path that's going to work best for them, not a one-size-fits-all strategy. So where do you start when you work with people? Okay, find out their preferences, needs, and expectations. So when you're directing questions, these are some of the things that you might want to do to direct their questions. Okay, figure out what has worked in the past, what has motivated them in the past, and what can motivate them now. Okay, when you're helping to set goals with your client, you want to make them agreed upon, okay, and actually attainable, and actually something that's going to work with them, so we also want to make sure that these goals are SMART goals as well, but we want to work with our client to establish those. Okay, we want to figure out not only what the goals are, but what's going to be a most realistic strategy to actually get to those goals. And again, we're going to talk about motivational interviewing soon. That can help us direct this path. Okay, we might also want to talk to them a little bit about what Okay, you said that you had a physical activity practice for 10 years. What do you think led you to stop, or what kind of got in the way? And we can figure out what their barriers were so we can help lower them for this time around, okay? And ideally, we have some like reinforcing factors, like we talked about the precede proceed model, those kind of rewards or encouragements or support that's going to help them keep coming back. Okay, so some sort of incentives, or just like way to go, those kind of things, some sort of logbook, these kind of incentives. And sometimes it can be a little bit of competitive incentives if that person likes competition, can also help that person move forward. Okay, so some things to think about, again, when you're working more on this one-on-one situation with clients.